Thank you so much, Mr. Gutschus. Thank you for the introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, my talk is about family violence, and there is good reason to talk about family violence because more than 80% of the cases of the violent acts are committed within the family. And my research is about concepts trying to prevent violence in these families, especially in families at high risk. Now, I know it's the third talk this afternoon. It's going to the end of the afternoon, and I thought about how can I manage that your attention is focused to my talk. So I thought maybe I give you just the conclusion of my talk, then you can decide how you want to go on. So the conclusion is there are possibilities to prevent violence in families. And moreover, we can test empirically these interventions, and there is also empirical evidence that we are effective with those programs. And I tried just to show you a couple of examples how we go on in this job and how we try to plan these strategies to prevent violence in families at risk. Now, if you try to support families, you have two reasons to do that. First, you try to stabilize the family in order to improve family cohesion for families at risk, and also in order to improve the psychological and physical development of the children. And secondly, of course, you intervene in order to protect the child. The problem in child protection is well known because you know all the cases from the media. We have serious cases of child maltreatment and neglect of around 5%. You already know this number, 5%. We have a higher frequency in lower social classes, and we also have a higher frequencies in families with migration background. We have poverty in the families, so we have a new term, child poverty, to talk about and to take it very seriously in the industrialized countries. But I also wanted to state just now that child poverty is not a reason to become violent in a family. There must be other factors too. So there usually is a bundle of factors which makes a family to a family at risk. We have increasing problems in parenthood and family cohesion. You all know these problems. That would be another talk for itself. But we also have a problem awareness now concerning violence and violence prevention and child protection in our society. That's the positive side. We also concentrate and focus in our scientific work on the early childhood of these children and the family environment in the early childhood, because we know about the very well-established correlation between adverse childhood experiences and later onset of psychological and even physical symptoms and illnesses. And we are able, because we conducted 5, 6, 7 longitudinal studies worldwide in the meantime, that these studies showed us results and made it possible to identify some of the factors which cause these problems later in adulthood. So violence experience like emotional neglect, like insecure attachment, like being abused, sexually, emotionally abused, and parental divorces are those factors. There are also some instabilities in the families, like physically handicapped parents, psychologically drug problems, physically handicapped father especially, and psychologically ill drug problems with the father, or even the death of a parent. These factors change the family structure, and these factors cause instability for the children. And we know if there is a bundle of these adverse childhood experiences, the result can be a decrease in psychological health, a decrease in physical health, the school education is worse, the professional career is worse, the quality of life is lower. And we also know that if you suffer from these childhood experiences, you also will more frequently tend to transmit violence to the next generation. There is also a frequency to delinquency later on in adulthood and to drug abuse. So there are many of these factors which are very well identified now and which can be correlated to these adverse childhood factors. Science also told us about the positive caring conditions a child needs. We heard some lectures about the baby watchers and the research in early childhood. And from them, these researchers, we know that adequate caring, time, rules, discipline is necessary, that a good enough relationship with warmth and fairness is necessary. And children also need a secure attachment in early childhood. So the sensitivity of the mother, the promptness of the reaction of the mother to the needs of the baby, that's also very necessary. And you also should serve as a model for your kids. So if you just take this scientific evidence from the longitudinal studies and from the developmental psychological research, it's evident and obvious that you should invest in prevention, and you should invest in early childhood prevention. You can invest in primary prevention strategies, which are usually universal and very broad without having any risk identified. You can also, and you should also, invest in secondary prevention, because if there is a risk allocated in the family for the child, you should intervene in the family to help the family to overcome all the burdens. You can differentiate prevention strategy according to the focus. You might center on the child, on the parental competencies, on the family support. You also might help families to have better financial support, so you improve the ecological systems, the environment of families, and you also can help the institutions like the kindergartens and the schools, all these institutions where children are growing up. If you help the institutions, you also help the children to develop appropriately. There are some prerequisites for this research. There is very good evidence that the earlier the better. So if you apply your strategies in the very early childhood, it's the best you can do for the development of the child and also for the stability of the couple and for the family. That's why the transition between the couple and becoming the parents, that's why this threshold is so relevant and so important. You should not trust just on a single intervention program. There should be more intervention across the life course, especially focused on these life course thresholds. We should reach as many children as possible, and we should, of course, reach also the children at risk. And that's not easy to reach these children at risk, and I will talk to you about that later on. We should also try to have some synergetic effects just by focusing on different levels, like supporting the family and trying to help the child to develop according to its own competencies and capacities. So you focus on the child and on the parents, and the effects that's already scientifically proven are much higher if you just double the strategy. And of course, all these strategies should be evaluated because they are very much cost intensive, and you have to convince the politicians that preventive strategies will work out well and that they bring some money back. So there are cost-effectiveness studies, for example, in the United States, that every dollar you invest in these primary prevention programs brings you back $4 in the adulthood. We don't have one single study in our in Germany, or I don't know about Switzerland, but I don't think that we have one in Europe, just 2 studies in the United States. So let me give you just some examples. This is a parent course. So this is a course where we try to improve the parental competencies in raising children. It's a course where we try to prepare couples for the transition to parenthood, where we try to strengthen parental competencies, and we try to develop secure attachment for the baby. So we help to develop a positive parent-infant interaction. There is some research, especially the Mannheim cohort Risiko study, shows that the parent-infant interaction is a crucial criterion to give the best support for the child's development. We prepared 5 lessons for the parents, and these are the contents of the lessons. So the first lesson is about I'm able to care for myself too. That's mainly a lesson for the mother, because many of the mothers, especially depressive mothers, tend to overburden themselves. So they should care not only for the baby, but also for themselves. The second lesson is about partnership. So we try to integrate the fathers. The third is about the communications of the babies. So parents are usually fascinated that their babies are able to communicate via signals to them, that they can show when they are hungry, that they can show them when they are tired. And parents can detect these signals, they can interpret the signals so that they are able to react promptly and adequately to these signals. The fourth lesson is about the excessive crying of babies. So around 20% of the babies suffer from excessive crying. And we know that excessive crying is a risk factor for maltreatment. So 6%, that's a very good study from the Netherlands, 6% of the parents with excessive crying babies tend to maltreatment. So that's a very high number. And the fifth session is about trust on your own parental competencies, because we realize more and more how insecure, how less self-confident parents are now in their own competencies. So there are these competencies. You just have to tell them, why don't you trust to your own competencies and not to all these texts and paragraphs in the parent guidebooks. There are more than, there are hundreds of parent guidebooks, and parents who come to us usually are confused by the advices they get from these books. We work out materials for those lessons, like a book of theory about these parent-infant interaction, and also an instruction booklet where all these 5 lessons are worked out in detail, so that midwives, for example, can be trained in these courses, and they conduct the courses together with the parents in these preparation courses during pregnancy. So midwives are the ideal partners for these parent courses. We also have a DVD with 38 video clips, because these video clips can show these signals to the parents. So it's possible for the parents to have a look, how it looks like, such a signal, and then they can go to their baby and check whether they can identify the same signal. And they are so happy with that they can feel that this baby is an active baby, is an active partner, and that it makes some consequences if you, as parents, act like this to the baby. So it's a very low-level parent program. You just need a weekend or 5 evenings, and you get the knowledge not only how to handle the diaper, you also get the knowledge to get your baby a secure attachment. Now, we experienced that only few parents show up for these parent courses. It's not very easy to convince parents nowadays that this is a very nice event, that they learn a lot, that it will be fruitful for them and for the baby. So we have to work on that very hard. And especially the families at risk don't show up in these parental courses. The families at risk, these 5% of the families, they even don't show up in the preparation courses during the pregnancy. They just go to the hospital later on to give the birth to the child. But before, you don't see them. That's why we thought about pathways to reach these families at risk. And that's what we do with our project, Nobody Slips Through the Cracks. The aims are the same. We try to support all families during the period of getting parents, but we try with this project to reach the highly burdened, so-called at high risk families. And we conceptualize a 3-steps approach. In order to detect and assist a family that is at high risk, we use this 3-step model. We try to establish an access to the family at risk. Then we try to identify the risks and also the resources of this family. And the 3rd step is to mediate an appropriate intervention. We use mainly the medical health system to get access to these families at risk, because all of these women go to the hospital to give birth to the child. and there they are, at least for 3 days. And that's the opportunity to make contact to them and to get an access to the family. So, of course, we also try to use gynecologists as door openers or counseling centers for pregnant women, midwives, hospital pediatricians, all these professions who are in contact with these families in the transitionhood from couple to parenthood. We also created a screening instrument, the Heidelberg Burden Scale, where we have a 5-factor model to identify the risks. We train all these medical doctors and the medical staff in the hospitals to be able to apply this checklist to the family. So that's a 3-hour training course, and after that the team of a ward is able to identify and to find a cutoff score for each of the families at risk. So is it a family at risk? They call just a coordinator in the county. I'm just going to tell you about that. And then a midwife is coming, making contact to the woman and making the first appointment, making a home visit. We know that especially the midwives are very, very good contact persons and mediators for help. They are the best door openers we can imagine, because usually women are leaning on these midwives. And midwives is also a profession which is not negatively connotated, like all the social welfare institutions. And we also know that families just with babies are very open, because all the parents want to be good parents for their babies. So it's a very good time where you can approach these families and where you can address your helping systems. So applying just this 3-step model to these families at risk, we have 2 pathways. So if the family is not at risk, we just recommend our parent course, Understanding the Baby. And if the family is at risk, we call the family midwife, who is making contact to the family and making an appointment for the first home visit. And then, according to the problems and the resources in this family, the family midwife tries to accompany the family during the first year of life of the child. If after this first year of life there is still some help needed, the case is transferred to family therapists of the social welfare systems. Our project is one of the models of the Federal Republic of Germany, and is financially very well supported. And we had the chance to work with one state, the state of Saarland. Saarland, as you may know, is the smallest country in Germany. It consists of 6 counties, but it's really very ideal for our model just to try out how it works. So we located in every of these counties a coordinator, accompanied by a researcher of my team, and the researcher is responsible to transfer all the restructuring ideas for the social network. In each of these counties, we established a network for parents. This network of parents includes all the professional guilds in the field of prevention and intervention in early childhood. So these task forces are meeting 3 or 4 times a year, gathering all these professions and working out cooperations. This network of parents is coordinated by the coordinator, which has to be paid by each county. So that's not a research position. It has to be paid by the county itself. And this coordinator is just in the center of the structure which we establish throughout this county, and the coordinator is in close contact to the family midwives who are doing the interventions, and also with a researcher of my institute. So we have a nucleus in every of these counties. In the meantime, we have 9 counties, 6 in the Saarland and 2 in Hessen, and also the city of Heidelberg. This means that we not only see some of the families, we try to see all of the families at risk in a given county. And we try to restructure all the early interventions so that it's able that no family will slip through the cracks. Of course, that's idealistic, and that's our goal, but we try to fulfill it. In Hessen, we reached 2.15%, and in Saarland, we reached 3.6% of all the families. And as I told you, around 5% in the industrialized countries show these kinds of families at risk. We also had 3 cases of institutionalized childcare in Hessen, and 4 of them in the Saarland. So it's also able to identify these maltreated children very, very early, and not only at the age of 3 or 4 years when it's already too late. Okay, so we try to improve these numbers in this year and next year by finding better concepts, especially for families with migration background or for teenager pregnancies. So there are special problems, or mothers with drug abuse, for example, where we also have to adapt our concept to be able also to make contact to these very, very difficult families. So I gave you an example about parental competencies. The last one was about giving support to families. And now I give you an example how we can improve the social emotional competences of a child. So that's child-centered prevention. And in this concept, I'm going to talk about Faust laws, which was already mentioned by Mr. Gutsche. Why do we apply a curriculum for social emotional competences in children in kindergartens and schools? Because every child has to go to school. So there is a fantastic possibility to address each child and to apply these preventive strategies to the children. And also to the children at risk, because children at risk also are going to school. We have the possibilities that we can apply these curricula from the kindergarten up to the secondary school. So from 3 years on up to 14 years, 15 years, to establish something like an alternative track for the children. The idea behind it is if these children are lacking some competencies because their families are at risk and don't show up the resources a child needs to grow up appropriately, these children might profit more than the other children from these social emotional curricula. And the research shows that high-risk children coming from these families profit twice as much as the other children from these curricula. Schools are also, of course, real-life situations, so you not only talk about violence, you see violence there, so you can intervene and you can apply what you learned in the lessons. How do we teach social emotional competences? We teach them like we teach a child to read or to write. It's just the same that you prepare lessons that these children are learning, for example, empathy, or learning to deal with emotions. The materials which come from this secondary STEP program, from an American program, are all German, of course, because they have to be adapted to our culture. And here we work with a picture showing a conflict. We already heard today about conflict, so these are children's conflict. And every child has to solve problems and have to go through conflicts hundreds of times every day. And every child needs competencies to solve these problems. And we are able to identify these prerequisites of a child because we know about these dialogue competencies a child needs to go through just these conflicts. That's a little bit complicated, but I'm very quick, okay? So you already saw one picture about the coding system just to identify emotions looking at the face of a child. So this is encoding the cues. If a child learns this face shows anger, this face shows disgust, and so on. And we heard already how problematic it is for children with aggressive behavior to differentiate between anxiety and anger. So to interpret the cue, to perceive is one thing, to interpret the cue is the other thing. Then to respond to the cue is a third thing. And then you also might decide, how do I go on in the interaction? And then you decide for one kind of interaction, and then you have to check whether your behavioral enactment was correct in that moment or not. So you have a series of decisions in milliseconds, of course, in every dialogue. And of course, these processes in a dialogue are tackled by emotional processes, are influenced by the memory store and the personal experience of every child, of course. So these are also the starting points, these psychological dimensions. So encoding of cues would be that children learn to differentiate effects, that we show them different effects with these photos, or they go out and look at adults and identify them as looking angry or disappointed or sad and so on. Then you promote empathy during the lessons. You learn to teach the children to identify the problem. What is the problem? Can you explain it? Why are you so angry? To look for alternatives in the acting and to give them some strategies just to have a better impulse control. And you also help them to deal with their feelings, especially with the stronger and ambivalent feelings. So that's the theory behind our curriculum Faustlos. And we decided to have 3 psychological dimensions: the empathy, the impulse control, and the anger management. And these are the 3 psychological dimensions where we try to improve the capacities of the children and where we work on during the lessons. The lessons here for the elementary schools, all in all, we have 51, is it correct, 51? Yeah, 51 lessons in 3 grades. You see that the teachers work on empathy, impulse control, and anger management in every grade, but of course, because the children are growing up very rapidly, you have to change your didactic materials every year. So the way you address the children is very different, but you focus on the same psychological dimension. From the kindergarten up to the secondary school, these 3 dimensions are worked over and worked over again. We have a suitcase, the Faustlos suitcase, where all the materials and videos and all these things are stored. And that's a big help for the teachers, because the suitcases just gives them the feeling, I have something. I never learned that during my studies, but I have here my suitcase, and this will help me to go through the lessons. This is the materials for the elementary school, and I just skip that. The lessons are very well worked out. They have 4-dimension preparation for the teachers, and then the script for the lesson. And there's also a 3rd part, which is relevant. The 3rd part is a role play. So it's not useless to have role plays. No, in contrary, to exercise, we need these role plays. We not only talk about conflict solutions, we exercise solutions, so that children are going to habituate to the solutions. And also it's very necessary to give some transfer to the parents, of course, and also some transfer just not only in the classroom, but also in the whole school. And the teachers tell us the whole school climate is changing after these curricula are implemented in a school. So this Faustlos curriculum has been established now in more than 8,000 schools in Germany. There are whole districts where you won't find any school without Faustlos. And there are kindergartens, so the children in the kindergartens go on to these schools, and they're just following up the same lessons. And there are cities like Düsseldorf. I've been there 2 weeks ago, where we celebrated the 100th kindergarten in Düsseldorf. And you see, it's not only that in research we can show that these programs are effective, you can also show that people are really passionate to take it over and to put the things in the right place for the children. Thank you for your attention.